So Amy will be next. I'll just go ahead and let you take the floor there.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll do a little introduction while they're getting my presentation up. My name is Amy Schmidt. I'm a faculty member in Biological Systems Engineering at UNL on East Campus, and then also have an appointment in Animal Science. And my appointment is primarily extension, so I'm 60% extension and 40% research. And I guess in a casual way, I'm known as the manure lady. So I don't know if that's good or not, but that's, I've embraced it, so it's okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our animal manure management team with the University of Nebraska and some of the kind of statewide and efforts that we have been working on the last few years. Okay, so first I just kind of want to make sure everybody, this thing seems like it's cutting in and out. I want to make sure that we realize that it's a team effort here. The whole manure management team works together on research and outreach and educational programs and trainings that are required of our animal feeding operations, our permitted animal feeding operations in the state. So, so these are several of the educators and specialists from on campus that make up this team. So, like I said, manure management is kind of my area of interest, and as an engineer, I know some of the soil people probably really hate us coming into that soil health area. No?
All are welcome.
Okay, good. Because I realize we're not, my background is not soils. It's manure and mostly probably design of manure storage systems and handling systems. So, but we realize when we have areas of intensive livestock production, which we have a lot of that in the state of Nebraska, if we're not recycling those manure nutrients on our cropland, but we're still bringing in inorganic fertilizer for that cropland, we're causing an imbalance, and that manure's got to get used at some point, and often that can result in it being over-applied or not used in the most responsible way. And so our angle is kind of, we don't expect manure to replace inorganic fertilizer ever. We think they can work well together, and from a soil health aspect, manure, I think, has a role there. And I was happy when I saw at least one mention of manure in your slides. Like, I always see cover crops and tillage practices and all these, and I think, where's manure? Because we know, it's got a lot of good properties. That's why it's been used as a fertilizer for so many thousands of years. So I want to talk about a couple of field research projects and some lab projects related to those that we've had going over the last few years. And this first one here, actually all of them that I'm going to talk about, combine manure management with eastern red cedar management. And I'm guessing there will be a lot of other talks today that talk about eastern red cedar today and tomorrow, but in our particular work, we've been looking at commingling these animal manures with wood chips, cedar wood chips, as an amendment to use in agricultural fields. And so this project originated out of the Middle Niobrara, NRD, and there were a couple producers there that one had swine manure, one had beef manure. They wanted to give it a try, mixing the cedar chips with their manure and applying to fields. So we set out to do that and look at the soil health aspects and some of the crop productivity aspects of it. So zip along here. Okay, so you can see the two stars up in the northern part of the state. Those are where our sites were located. We had a 4x6 randomized design out there, so we had 6 treatments that we replicated 4 times each on 2 different producers' farms. Now these plots were 33 feet by 40 feet, so they weren't huge. And then I'll get into next the expansion that we've done on the project on larger plots. But so these were the treatments that we were looking at. WB1, WB2, those are just wood chips or woody biomass at a single application pass and at double. So, you know, we set out with an idea in mind of what we would get, and in the past, applying that, and I think it was different every time we applied those out there, but roughly we were looking at 17 megagrams per hectare and 34. And if I could think of the conversion of that quickly, I would tell you, because these numbers don't mean a lot when we talk megagrams and hectares. That's not really the language we speak here. But then we had woody biomass at that single pass application rate mixed with cattle manure, woody biomass mixed with swine manure, woody biomass that we came back in and applied liquid nitrogen on, and then our control had no amendment added. And so I took out all of the graphs and the tables of numbers and all that, because I think what you probably are interested in is just the bottom line of what did we find. So on these plot studies, we had these for 3 years. And so at the end of 3 years, we did see some soil organic matter concentration increases with the two woody biomass treatments and with the woody biomass and cattle manure. And so when I say different, I've showed down here in the corner our p-value for our statistics, and that's applies to all of the data that I'm going to show you here. Bulk density of our soil was reduced for all of the treatments except the woody biomass with liquid nitrogen. Sorptivity increased for the double application of woody biomass and the woody biomass plus cattle manure. I'm not entirely sure why those two particular ones stood out, but you know, the woody biomass itself it's a mulch, so of course it's going to hold some of that water there and slow it down and keep it in place so that it does infiltrate the soil. So we wanted to look at soil biological properties, and these are probably a little more foo-foo type measurements that we don't really have a good way of measuring soil biology or relating that to an increasing yield or things like that. But it's part of that soil health definition, the physical, chemical, and the biological properties. So we did do 4 different biological measurements, and we didn't see any effect of our treatments on that. But I will say these 2 farms up in the Sandhills were very well managed to start with. So they had probably higher soil organic matter than most, probably higher biological activity than most in that area. They were no-till, cover crops, residue, grazing. So they had a lot of the good things going for them that we heard about in the last presentation that are good for soil health. We did find that soil temperature was more stable under any treatment that had woody biomass, so that makes sense. We mulch our flower beds for the same reason, so we kind of keep it same, you know, consistent moisture and hold some of that that heat in to the soil. Soil moisture content was not impacted by treatment. Why do you think that would be? We would think mulch is going to hold all the moisture, right? We never let the soil dry out because these were irrigated sites, so we never really got a good picture of how that woody biomass impacted soil moisture. It was wet all the time there. So once we finished that project, we decided to expand this statewide and do a project where we were looking at these same sorts of soil amendments, but on larger plot sizes in our fields, different soil types across the state, different management systems. And so this project that I'm going to go over briefly here is is one that's funded by the Environmental Trust and then some additional funding from this outdated group shown here. Now it's NDEE, but I'm still not used to that, so I'll say NDEQ. So these are just some pictures of our on-farm research, and again, we were looking to demonstrate and document what kinds of changes we see in our soils, in our agronomic productivity, the economics of using manure and or mulch as soil amendments under these different conditions across the state. And so for this one, we've got 6 locations. Tried to find 6 natural resource districts that wanted to work with us. And then we have local teams that include the natural resource district folks, the extension educator in that area, and then we have the farmer that's working with us for the on-farm research. And then the 4th part of that is a local high school agriculture program that's near the research sites so that we can get the students engaged in some of that work as well. So these, this kind of an example of our plots where we can doing up to 4 treatments, replicated 4 times. Every site has a manure treatment. 5 of them are beef manure. 1 is swine manure. They all have a mulch plus manure treatment. Their regular fertility management, which is fertilizer. And then if they have something else they want to test, we gave them that option. So 2 of our sites are doing a double application of woody biomass. 1 of our sites is doing biochar. And I think those are 2 that are 3 sites that are different. So along with this project I mentioned, we have the school engagement. We've got the 6 schools that are working with us. We have a curriculum we developed for them. I shouldn't say we. Augustine Olivo, who is my grad student, developed these. And then a soil biology guide. So what we're trying to do is kind of, we talked about how do we get that word out a little better? How do we share our message about manure management a little better? And we think, maybe it's through the younger generation, and they're, if you convince them, then as they go forward and enter, farming or working with their parents, that message will be kind of carried by them as well. So we don't have any results yet for that study because it started this cropping season. We are doing soil chemical, biological, physical property measurements, and we'll look at crop yield, we'll get the economic data. And what we really want to be able to look at is not just did we increase the yield with a treatment, but did we increase the return on investment for that farmer? So if they were able to cut back fertilizer because they were using manure and it gave them a yield bump, is that, is that money in their pocket, even if their yield was lower than normal, was the return on investment better for them? So then I just want to show a couple lab studies related. We wanted to see, look at nitrate leaching from these different treatments. We used a soil column study where we were able to pack the soil in there, put the treatment on top, do a simulated irrigation every week, collect the water coming out of the bottom, collect the air off the top, kind of look at greenhouse gases and everything there. And so we found no impact on water nitrate concentration. Now, I would say, keeping in mind these were soil columns in the laboratory, I'm not convinced that it's completely what we would see in a field setting, but for most of the treatments, we saw an increase in carbon dioxide emissions, at least early in the process, and then it kind of leveled out. We were worried about nitrogen immobilization from the wood chips. That's a question we get a lot. Again, in this setting, we did not see that, but what we did from there then is go on to some kind of field scale studies looking at the same sort of thing. And so we've got, one of them is a degradation study. So we're looking at how quickly does this biomass degrade when it's applied. We're looking at soil biological activity by putting these cotton cloths in the soil. We know the dimensions of them. We go back 3 months, 6 months later and remove those, and we look at the amount of degradation, which is going to be an artifact of the bugs in there that are breaking that down. Extracting earthworms, doing bulk density and slake tests, and just kind of all of those physical and biological tests that you can think of, trying to kind of get an idea of what can we share with farmers as, like, you know, we talk about soil organic carbon taking so long, soil organic matter taking so long to change. And it's hard to stick with something when you're told, well, in 5 years, you're gonna see a difference. And so we're trying to see what are these short-term changes that we can demonstrate to kind of keep folks moving forward on some of these practices. And so then along with this, we've got these are some mesh bags with our different treatments in them that are placed out in a field at the Rogers Memorial Farm, which is a research farm just east of Lincoln. And so we're looking at some of the nitrogen and carbon dynamics of those different amendments, the degradation rates where we can actually take that back in and weigh it because it's contained in that mesh bag. And so the last part of it is our outreach, and I'm hoping that folks recognize some of these. We've been, for about the last year, been doing a lot of social media outreach, trying to increase the visibility, I guess, of our manure management team as a resource in the state. And so every month we put out a handful of graphics along with an article that those link to that tells more information about the topic. And we've kind of got a partnership going with several of the commodity groups in the state and other agricultural groups that they help send these messages out to their clientele. So these are just a couple of examples of those outreach methods that we're using. So with that, I'm going to leave you with some of the partners that we're working with and the funding sources, and let Daryl do his presentation. Then we'll get to questions after that. So thank you.